What if the most expensive thing at an engagement party wasn't the ring, but the truth someone tried to bury? What if a fake date hired to save a millionaire's pride walked into a ballroom and walked out holding the key to a family secret worth more than his entire fortune? Meet Ava Monroe. She pours coffee by day. She sketches dreams by night. One thin month from eviction. One last bill from giving up. Meet Lucas Grant. The headline, Success. The man with a private elevator and a broken past he refuses to name. Next week, his ex-fiancée parades her new life before the same crowd that once cheered for his. Lucas refuses to go alone. He hires Ava. One night. A clean contract. No feelings. No mess. But a contract can't control a room, or a rumor, or a keepsake locket Ava wears under her thrift store dress, an old silver oval, holding a faded photo she never shows. Under the chandeliers, a single glance will split open the evening, and the story they think they're telling will collide with the story they were born into. Ava Monroe was 26 and already fluent in the language of almost. Almost caught up on rent. Almost done paying off the ER visit after her mother's fall. Almost saving enough to start the small book and coffee nook she sketched on napkins during slow hours. She lived in a studio the size of a one-car garage, 10 paces wall-to-wall, a window that rattled when the wind hit from the Hudson, a hot plate that hissed like a temper. At dawn, she tied on a stained apron at Finch and Pine, the corner cafe that smelled like baked cinnamon and burnt hopes, and by dusk she peeled it off with fingers that ached from tamping espresso. Her day was measured in small, repeatable motions: grind, tamp, pull, smile, nod, ring, room for cream, and have a good one. She counted tips in quarters and nickels, stretched ground turkey into 2 more dinners with boxed macaroni stacked past due envelopes by size so the tallest didn't scare her. When a bill came with red letters, she flipped it face down. When the landlord's note slid under the door, she tucked it in a drawer she didn't open at night. On a nail by the sink hung the only thing she refused to pawn, a thin silver locket oval, and scuffed cool against the skin just above her collarbone. Inside, a 2x2 photograph, sun-faded at the edges, her mother in a cotton dress holding a baby under a maple tree somewhere in Ohio. On the back, in blue ink, a single sentence: "Give even when it hurts." The chain had snapped once during a double shift. She fixed it with a safety pin and kept going. If the city tried to take everything else, it would have to pry the locket loose. Ava kept a sketchbook under the mattress, nothing fancy, just heavy paper that took pencil well. On page 1, a floor plan of a narrow storefront with built-in shelves, 12 stools along a counter of reclaimed wood, a bell over the door that chimed like laughter. On page 2, a menu written in her neat block letters: drip cold brew, honey latte, hot chocolate with real whipped cream. In the margins, titles of books. She wanted on display old paperbacks with cracked spines that smelled like basements and summer. When the shifts ran long and the loneliness pressed in, she drew the bell again and the shelves and the curve of the counter where regulars would lean to tell her about their days. For a minute, maybe 2, she could hear the bell ring. Her friends said she had a soft face and a steel spine. They saw the steel when a customer snapped fingers, and she placed the cup down anyway, steady as a level. They saw the softness when a UPS driver limped in, and she slid him a hot chocolate on the house, just sign the receipt so the register won't yell at me. She learned names fast and remembered them longer than most, because names are what make a city less of a machine and more of a map. Every afternoon around 3, the cafe fell into a lull. The espresso machine cooled. The light came through the front window at a forgiving angle. If the manager stepped out to smoke, Ava wiped the counter twice and allowed herself a small luxury one song in her earbuds volume, low, eyes closed for exactly 1 verse. Not sleep. A pause. The kind that keeps a bridge from cracking. She avoided the fancy part of Midtown when she could. Too many glass fronts that reflected your face back at you like a question you didn't have time to answer. On delivery days, though, the route took her past a rooftop lounge with a door that never needed a push. She'd glance in as she hurried by dark wood, clean lines, the kind of quiet that costs money. She did not imagine herself there. She imagined sweeping it, resetting the candles between strangers with easy lives. That week, the city wore a film of rain. Umbrellas bloomed and folded like black flowers. The cafe's bell jangled without rhythm. Tourists asking for decaf students, asking for outlets a man in a suit who wanted a double and a glass of still water with 1 cube of ice. Ava served each one with the same careful tone. Careful, because tone was the only thing she could control. When she clocked out, she crossed the block with a tray of glassware for the lounge upstairs, an errand borrowed from a short-staffed runner. Backstairs, the bartender said, straight to the bar. The stairwell smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and wet wool. At the top, the atmosphere changed, low light, thick carpet, the hush of money. She set the tray down and looked up. A man in a charcoal suit sat alone at a corner table, a crystal tumbler in front of him, catching the bar light. He stared at an invitation like it might draw blood. He had the posture of someone who had won arguments by saying nothing and the eyes of someone losing one he couldn't name. When he looked up, Ava felt the oddest thing. A click like a door she'd never seen had just opened an inch. She lowered her gaze to the tray, to the glass, to the small work she trusted. The locket rested cool against her chest. She touched it once. Then she cleared her throat and said, "Excuse me. Do you need anything else before I go?" It was not a meet cute. It was a hinge. Lucas Grant had been born into marble hallways and velvet rope invitations, but he liked to tell the press he'd built everything himself. It was partly true his father's shipping money opened the first doors, but Lucas had kicked them wider with real estate flips, a hedge fund pivot, and finally a line of luxury tech lounges strung across Manhattan like constellations. At 37, he occupied a corner office that overlooked the Hudson from 50 stories up a glass throne where a swipe of his hand could approve or kill a deal worth more than Ava's lifetime earnings. His world was a choreography of quiet power. In the mornings, he swam laps in a private pool on the penthouse level. By 9, he was in an elevator lined with brushed steel, nodding once to a security man who had been Secret Service before the last election. At lunch, he met with venture partners under backlit logos while assistants replenished his water with slices of cucumber. In the evenings, he moved through a different Manhattan private lounges, rooftop tastings, darkened SUVs, rooms where contracts were whispered over champagne instead of signed in ink. And yet, for all the polish, Lucas carried a hairline crack in his armor. 4 years earlier, his fiancée, Eleanor Rivers, the daughter of a dynasty older than Manhattan's grid, had walked out on him 2 months before the wedding, trading the engagement ring for a scandal he had never lived down. She claimed he was cold. He claimed she was impulsive. Neither mentioned the real wound, a secret paternity case hidden by lawyers and NDAs that still haunted him. In elite circles, Eleanor's defection was treated like a blood sport. In gossip columns, Lucas became a punchline in bespoke suits. Now, Eleanor's engagement party glared from every invitation-only calendar. Gold lettering rooftop venue, a string quartet, and a charity tie-in to give it gravitas. Everyone who mattered would be there. Lucas's name, once shorthand for prestige, now hovered just outside the guest list like a question mark. Pride would not allow him to attend alone. Pride would not allow him to skip it either. This was his arena, and every eye would measure what he had lost, what he had gained, and whether he was still a player. In a different story, Lucas might have called a publicist, a stylist, a discreet actress for hire. But the last time he'd done that, the tabloids caught him at it, and the blowback had nearly tanked a deal. This time he needed someone no one could trace, someone authentic enough to fool the cameras. Someone who would walk into a room full of inherited diamonds and make them wonder where she came from. His penthouse office bore no trace of clutter. A single abstract canvas hung behind his desk, all steel gray and knife-white strokes. On his credenza, sat two photographs turned face down. One of his father at the shipyard grinning under a crane. The other of a toddler with curls he had never met but supported through a trust fund every month. He had not lifted either frame in years. Across the river, Ava Monroe mopped a spill behind the espresso machine, unaware that the man upstairs with a bourbon he wouldn't drink had already started imagining her as his solution. Lucas's assistant, Dana, had warned him. Hire an escort if you must, but don't drag a civilian into your narrative. They break differently. Lucas had smiled without humor. Civilians photograph better. And sometimes, he said, glancing at the rain-streaked skyline, sometimes you need someone who doesn't know which knife is which. Down in the rooftop lounge, as Ava placed the tray on the bar and said, "Excuse me?" Lucas lifted his gaze. Her voice didn't tremble. Her shoes were scuffed. Her hair still smelled faintly of coffee grounds. He saw not just a waitress, but a person untouched by the kind of circles that had hollowed him out. The kind of authenticity you can't buy. For a second, he almost let her walk away. Then Eleanor's name flashed on his phone screen, the engagement announcement vibrating like a dare. He set the phone face down, looked back at Ava, and said the words that would knot their lives together. "You, stop." She did. The rain let up on Saturday night, leaving the city glassy and bright. The Grand Meridian's ballroom glowed like a lantern above Fifth Avenue. Strings tuned in the corner. Champagne moved in tall arcs from tray to hand. It was the kind of room that measured people by the quiet they commanded when they entered. Lucas Grant arrived with Ava Monroe on his arm. He didn't rush. He didn't perform. He only paused long enough for the cameras to find them, then led her through the doors with the calm of a man who planned the evening like an acquisition. Ava's midnight blue dress skimmed her frame. The silver chain at her throat was the same scuffed locket she wore at the cafe. She had refused the diamond necklace his team couriered over that afternoon. She had refused the stylist's request to pin up her hair. She kept the locket and the hair and her balance. "Rules," Lucas murmured as they crossed the marble. "Stay within arm's reach. If anyone presses answer in one sentence. Smile in twos, not threes." In English, Ava said under her breath. "Stand with me. Speak briefly. Don't let them see you flinch." She did not. Heads turned. The hum shifted. A hedge fund cousin lifted his glass. A society columnist raised her phone. Then Eleanor Rivers drifted from a cluster of guests in a river-red gown, her smile sharp and polished. "Lucas," she said, air-kissing near his cheek without touching. "You look well. You look disciplined." Her gaze slid assessing to Ava. "And you brought a friend." Eleanor Lucas replied evenly. "Ava Monroe." Monroe Eleanor repeated, tasting the syllables. What a cinematic name. Ava met the stare head-on. "Congratulations," she said. "The room is beautiful." "Beauty is editing," Eleanor said, smile fixed. "It's knowing what to keep and what to cut." She tilted her head, eyes flicking to the locket. "Some things you cut, others cling." Lucas moved them on. Donors, board members, questions disguised as pleasantries where they met how long, whether they'd been traveling. Ava answered in clean lines. "At a coffee bar," she said. "A few months? We've both been busy." Her voice didn't shake. She remembered to breathe between commas. She remembered to laugh once, only once, at a joke that wasn't funny. Lucas kept a palm at her back, a touch that functioned like ballast more than claim. He watched the room watch her. He watched himself watching and didn't like how little control that gave him. At the first toast, Eleanor's fiancé, a banking heir with perfect hair, thanked the room for believing in second chances. The crowd clinked. The quartet swelled. Ava excused herself for a glass of water. In the corridor, a server's tray pitched. Ava caught the edge-steadied stemware and offered the woman a napkin from her own clutch. "You're fine," she said low. "Take a breath." When she turned back, a pair of guests waited like gatekeepers. "So," one said, smiling too wide, "how does one meet Lucas Grant advisory work a family thing, a casting?" "Coffee," Ava said. Really, the other hummed. How democratic. They stepped closer, scent of sharp flowers and money. You must have quite a story. I have a job, Ava said, and a day off. Lucas appeared at her shoulder before the next question landed. Gentlemen, he said, the smile he used in rooms with sharks, if you'll excuse us. On the balcony, the air was cold and clean. The city stretched outward in 1,000 points of light. Cars stitched the avenue below. You did well, Lucas said. Define well, Ava said. Because in there, well feels like don't give them blood. That is well, he said. Then your world is starving. He almost laughed. He almost agreed. Instead, the doors opened. Eleanor stepped out alone this time, arms folded against the breeze. I keep meaning to say, she began looking at Ava's throat. What a charming antique. The locket. It was my mother's, Ava said. Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. I had one just like it when I was little. Rivers silver. Oval. A dent along the rim from when I dropped it on the terrace in Maine. Funny what the body remembers when the mind moves on. Her gaze sharpened. May I see it? Ava's hand went instinctively to the chain. It's old. The clasp sticks. So does memory, Eleanor said softly. Lucas stepped between them. This is not the conversation. Eleanor's laugh was quiet. Of course it is. She leaned past him, voice low-pitched for Ava alone. Be careful, Miss Monroe. Lucas adores a narrative. He's excellent at casting. Ava didn't look away. I'm not here to be cast. Eleanor's eyes flicked to Lucas, then back. No, she said. You're here to be tested. They re-entered the ballroom. The second toast rang. The crowd tightened. At the center of the floor, a white linen table held the engagement cake and a crystal box with place cards, family names in gold ink. A Rivers aunt lifted the lid to add one more. The lid slipped. The box slid. Cards fanned to the floor like a snowfall. Ava crouched to help scooping the thick paper into neat stacks. A loose card had fallen farther under the table leg. She reached, caught it, and paused. The gold crest in the corner, the same filigree stamped faint but unmistakable on the inside face of her locket. Her thumb traced the oval through the fabric of her dress, then pressed the locket open with a small click. The photo inside the cotton dress, the baby under the maple, had always been only image. Tonight, the opposite side, a piece she'd never noticed under the dark patina, caught the chandelier's light. An engraving no one would see unless the case was held just so, Rivers 1988. Eleanor saw the open locket. She saw the crest on the card in Ava's other hand. She went still. Security, someone joked too loud. We've got a thief on the floor. Silence dropped like a curtain. Eleanor didn't smile. She lifted a hand and pointed to the locket, each word precise, each syllable a bell. That she said is my family's. Where did you steal it? The quartet stopped mid-phrase. Glasses froze halfway to lips. Even the HVAC seemed to hold its breath. Ava closed her fingers around the locket so hard the edge bit her palm. She looked at Lucas. She looked at Eleanor. She looked at the engraving that had been at her throat for years, a name she had never known to read. Answer her, a board member said. Ava swallowed once, steady, and said nothing. The ballroom moments before a pageant of champagne and string music turned to stone. Glass stems trembled in midair. 100 eyes fixed on the small oval of silver in Ava's fist. Lucas felt the oxygen thin. Eleanor's voice, sharp but steady, cut through the hush. That locket belonged to my mother, she said. It vanished the summer my sister disappeared. Explain yourself. Ava's throat went dry. It's mine, she said, almost a whisper. It's always been mine. Not possible, Eleanor said, stepping closer. The dent on the rim, the crest inside. This is Rivers silver. That's our crest. That's my. She broke off, staring at Ava as if seeing her for the first time. Where did you get it? Lucas moved between them. Enough, he said, his voice pitched, low but carrying. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place, Eleanor snapped. She's wearing my sister's locket at my engagement party. Do you think the cameras won't notice? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ava took a step back, palm clamped tight around the locket, the photo pressing into her skin. For 26 years, it had been a keepsake. Tonight, it felt like an accusation. She turned to Lucas, eyes wide, searching for an anchor. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Tell me what you know about your parents," Eleanor demanded. "I grew up in Ohio, Ava," said, voice shaking. "My mother raised me alone. She died when I was 15. She left me this. I never knew my father. That's all." "That's not all," Eleanor said, her voice cracking now. "That's her. That's Rose's baby." She reached out, fingertips trembling, but stopped short of touching Ava. "Look at the photo, our maple tree in Maine, the summer house. My sister Rose was 16 when she disappeared. My parents told the press she'd run away. I never believed it. The police never found a body." Lucas felt the ground tilt under him. He'd read whispers of the river's disappearance in old society profiles, dismissed them as trivia. Now the girl from the cafe, the girl he'd hired as a prop, stood in front of him like a ghost, walking out of a sealed case file. "Security," someone murmured again. "Get the locket." "No!" Lucas said sharply. "No one touches her." His voice went from CEO calm to command. Ava backed toward the balcony doors, lungs pulling at air that wasn't there. "I didn't steal anything," she said louder now. "I didn't even know who you were until last week." Eleanor's fiancé stood up, trying for control. "We should clear the room." "No," Eleanor said again, quieter. "Not until she tells me, does your birth certificate list a father? A hospital, a date." Ava's hands shook. I never saw it. My mother, she said it didn't matter." "Of course she did," Eleanor whispered. "Because if she'd told you, you'd have come for us." Lucas placed a hand lightly on Ava's shoulder. "We're leaving," he said, and began steering her toward the exit. Eleanor followed, heels clicking like a countdown. On the balcony, the air hit like a slap, cold and high above the street. Ava gripped the railing locket, clutched to her chest. "What is happening?" she demanded. Lucas looked at her. "Tell me everything he said. From the beginning." "I did," Ava cried. "My mom was a waitress. She wore this every day. She said it was from my father. That's all. I don't know these people." Eleanor stepped out behind them, closing the door. The ballroom murmured on the other side like a muted jury. "My sister," she said softly, "was 16. She was pregnant. She vanished before she could show. My parents buried the scandal. I begged them to look. They told me to stop embarrassing the family. That locket was hers." Ava shook her head. But the photo, the engraving, the date were indisputable. Her mother had been Rose Rivers. She wasn't just some waitress's daughter. She was the hidden child of the very family whose crest glittered on champagne flutes behind the glass. "I'm not a thief," Ava said, tears pricking now. "I'm yours." She couldn't finish. "My niece," Eleanor breathed. "You're my niece." Lucas stepped back, trying to reconcile the two halves of his evening, the power move he'd planned, the woman he'd pulled from the cafe, and the fact that she now stood at the center of a dynasty scandal. For years, he'd been defined by his loss of Eleanor. Now the woman at his side was tied to her by blood. Eleanor's eyes softened. "You didn't know," she said. "I can see that." God, Rose must have been terrified. She reached into her clutch, pulled out a small envelope, and held it out to Ava. "I've carried this for years. It's the last letter she sent me. She said she couldn't keep the baby in our world. She said she'd find another." Ava took the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting on the front curling loops, faded blue ink, matched the note her mother had left taped inside the locket. "Give even when it hurts." She opened the letter and read, "Eleanor, by the time you get this, I'll be gone. I'm keeping the baby. I'm leaving the coast. Don't come after me. Protect the locket. One day she'll find you. Rose." Ava pressed the paper to her lips. "She never told me," she whispered. "She never said your name." Eleanor's voice cracked. "She wanted to protect you. From us. From all of this." Lucas watched the two women, the Manhattan skyline glinting behind them. His entire plan to walk in with a date to reclaim his image had dissolved into something raw, unmarketable human. Inside, through the glass, the guests were watching phones, raised murmurs climbing. The narrative was writing itself. Billionaire's date is Lost River's heir. He could already imagine the headlines. But for once he didn't care. Ava folded the letter back into its envelope, the paper damp from her fingers. She looked at Lucas, eyes rimmed red. "What do I do?" she asked. This was supposed to be one night. He held her gaze, then glanced at Eleanor. "Tonight is not the end," he said quietly. "It's the first move in a different game." By morning, the entire city had the story. Lost River's heir found at engagement party, read one headline. Billionaire's fake date is family's secret, read another. Paparazzi clustered outside the cafe before Ava even arrived for her shift. Reporters shoved microphones toward her as she tried to duck into the alley entrance. "Are you going to claim your inheritance? Did Lucas Grant plant you there to humiliate Eleanor? Were you part of a PR stunt?" She slammed the door behind her and leaned against the counter, breath shaky. Her phone buzzed with a dozen missed calls from unknown numbers. The locket at her throat felt suddenly heavier, like an anchor. Lucas called that afternoon. "Come to my office," he said. "Now." When Ava arrived, his floor-to-ceiling windows framed a gray Manhattan sky. He was standing by the glass jacket off sleeves rolled, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. On his desk lay two folders, one thick, one thin. "They're going to come for you," Lucas said, gesturing at the thick folder. "Lawyers, journalists, distant cousins. Some will want to welcome you, some will want to bury you. I can protect you. But you need to understand the price." Ava sank into the chair opposite him. "I never wanted any of this," she whispered. "I wanted rent money." Lucas almost smiled. "I wanted revenge. And somehow we both got something else." He opened the thin folder. Inside lay a copy of the Rivers Family Trust, a document older than either of them, with a clause naming Rose Rivers and issue as contingent beneficiaries. A small handwritten note in the margin, Eleanor's read if found honor. "This," Lucas said quietly, "makes you the legal heir to a controlling block of Rivers stock, and to a seat on the board of Meridian Holdings." Ava's stomach flipped. "I don't even own a car." "You own a dynasty," Lucas said, "at least on paper." The elevator chimed. Eleanor entered without knocking. No makeup now, hair tied back her red gown replaced by a black coat. She looked older in the daylight, but steadier. "I told my parents," she said simply. "They're furious. They're also relieved. They thought Rose was dead." She took a breath. "I want to help you." Ava stared at her. "Why?" "Because we were sisters," Eleanor said softly. "Because I should have done more. And because if you leave this to the lawyers, they'll eat you alive." Lucas poured water into 3 glasses. "We need to get ahead of this," he said. "If the board thinks you're a pawn, they'll squeeze you until you're paper. If you stand with us, you can control the narrative." "Stand with us," Ava repeated. Eleanor sat opposite, placing a small velvet box on the table. "Rose left this with me, too. It's a key to a safe deposit box at Grant Fifth Bank. Inside is the evidence of why she fled, medical records, a birth certificate, photographs. Proof you're her daughter, and proof of something else." Lucas tilted his head. "Something else." Eleanor hesitated, then opened the box. Inside lay a flash drive. "It's from the Rivers Foundation accounts," she said. "Emails between our father and your father. Lucas's father." Ava blinked. "What?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "My father?" "Yes," Eleanor said. "Ellis Grant. He funded Rose's disappearance. He paid for her medical care. He arranged a new identity. Your father hid her, Lucas, and he hid Ava from us all." The room went still. Ava felt her pulse hammer in her ears. "You're telling me the man who bankrolled my mother's escape is his father?" Lucas sat back slowly as if gravity had doubled. "That would make..." He trailed off. "That would make you half-siblings," Eleanor said. "Technically." Ava's breath caught. The city outside blurred into silver streaks. She pressed a hand to her mouth. "This is insane," she whispered. "This was supposed to be a job." Lucas rose, running a hand over his face. "I didn't know," he said. "God help me, I didn't know." Eleanor reached across the table and took Ava's free hand. "You're not alone," she said. "And you're not a prop. You're blood." For the first time since the ballroom, Ava let herself cry. Not pretty tears, not movie tears. Real ones, hot and silent, streaking her cheeks as she bowed her head over the silver locket. Lucas moved to stand behind her chair, unsure whether to touch her or retreat. For years, he'd built walls out of contracts and numbers. Now every one of them felt brittle, ridiculous. "You have a choice," Eleanor said. "You can take the inheritance quietly and disappear, or you can take the seat on the board and change the thing that almost killed your mother." Ava looked up, eyes red. "Change it how?" "Use the votes to force transparency. End the predatory contracts. Fund the clinics. Pull the skeletons out of the closet," Eleanor said. "It won't be easy, but it would mean something." Lucas found his voice. "And I'll stand with you," he said. "Not because of business, because it's the one thing I can do to make this right." Ava wiped her face. "And if I fail?" "Then you fail," Eleanor said simply, "but you won't fail alone." The three of them sat there as the city groaned and hummed beneath. In Ava's palm, the locket felt lighter now, less like a question, more like a key. The press conference was set for noon, but Ava asked for 10 minutes alone in the cafe before she walked into the lights. She unlocked the side door, flipped the chairs down, and brewed a single cup, the way her mother taught her slow, pour, steady wrist, a circle no wider than a quarter. Steam curled up like a benediction. The locket lay warm against her collarbone. On the back wall, her pencil sketch of a narrow book and coffee shop waited like a promise she'd made to a younger self. Outside, delivery trucks rattled past. Inside, the clock over the register ticked a solid, ordinary sound that didn't care about dynasties. Ava set the fresh cup on the counter and read the letter again. Rose's loops. Rose's warning. Give even when it hurts. Then she slipped the letter into a folder with the birth certificate, the bank key, and the notes Eleanor had marked in a careful hand. Evidence. Not gossip. Proof. At 11:45, Lucas's car eased to the curb. He didn't come in. He stood on the sidewalk with his hands in his coat pockets, watching his breath in the winter air, giving her the space that blood and truth now required. When she stepped out, he nodded once, a quiet pledge, not a claim. Eleanor waited by the door of the sedan, face bare, eyes steady. She squeezed Ava's fingers, then let go. The Rivers building was already ringed with cameras. Ava walked between Lucas and Eleanor, not behind them, not ahead. Kept her pace even, kept her shoulders level. On the steps, a reporter shouted the question everyone else was dancing around. "Ms. Monroe Ava, are you here for the money or the name?" Ava paused at the top step. She took the microphone. Let the silence gather. Then she spoke sentence by clean sentence, so no editor could cut out the marrow. "I'm here for the truth. I'm here for the girl my mother was when she was told to disappear. I'm here for the people whose lives are treated like margins on a spreadsheet. If a name can open a door, I'll use it. If money can repair the harm that hid me, I'll spend it. And when this is done, I will hang a bell over a cafe door and know I earned the ring of it with more than luck." She handed the mic back. The crowd surged. Lawyers stepped forward. So did a gray-haired woman from the foundation who whispered that there were records, a journal perhaps written by Rose the summer before she fled. Another door, another key. At dusk, the three of them, Ava, Eleanor, Lucas, stood in the hallway outside the closed archive. The custodian fumbled with the lock. Somewhere inside, a box waited. Paper waited. An answer waited. Or another question. If you were Ava, would you open the box tonight and set the past on fire, or leave it closed and write your own future from this hour forward? Would you forgive the family that hid you, or remake it on your terms? Millionaire hires a fake date for his ex's engagement party, but she steals the show Tioje.